Hello, it's Jennifer McGuire, and I'm excited today to be creating a tag for Ellen Hutson's 12 Tags of Christmas with a Feminine Twist. So I'm going to be showing you how to do a colored mirrored tag. On this tag there are lots of different techniques, and I'll show you all of them, but the highlight is all of these are little mirror embellishments that I created, and I added coloring with Copic markers, but I'll tell you some other options also. So I'm going to go ahead and walk you through this. A lot of these techniques could be used all year round. It doesn't have to be just for the holidays. So first I'm going to start by die cutting the tag. I decided to use a transparent tag. This is a Tim Holtz die from Sizzix, and it can cut through pretty much anything. And I decided to make a transparent tag. So I actually took a piece of thick transparency that I had from some packaging that I had kept. So this is just recycled. I think that it's great to reuse these pieces, and it's nice and thick and clear, and it's perfect for tags such as this. So now that I have this die cut, I am going to use a couple pieces of washi tape to hold it down onto my craft sheet. And then I have the stamp image from Stampers Anonymous, and I'm going to ink it up with white StazOn ink. White StazOn ink is great for stamping onto any kind of smooth surface, like a piece of acetate or transparency or glass or anything like that. So it's perfect for this transparent piece. And I'm using a stamp press because stamp press is a great way to press down when you're stamping with the sticky ink onto a smooth surface, and when you let go it just pops up and you don't get the smudge or smearing that you would if you tried to do it by hand. So the stamp press avoids any kind of slipping when you're stamping on a smooth surface. So you just hold it over your surface, stamp down, just press it down, and then you just let it pop right back up, and you don't have to worry about it getting messed up. So the reason I'm taping this to the table is so that it doesn't stick to the stamp, because white StazOn ink is a little sticky. So after I have this stamped, I'm going to carefully pick it up and set it aside to dry. You need to give this some time to dry. Now you'll notice I did stamp onto my craft sheet in the background there with a permanent ink. However, this is really easy to clean up. I just keep these alcohol swabs. You can get a box of them at the pharmacy for really low price, and I just can wipe away my craft sheet and have it clean again. So now I wanted to focus on these mirrored embellishments. This is a product from Tim Holtz. These are mirrored sheets, and they're self-adhesive. You can see the reflection there. They're nice and shiny, and this actually has a protective coating that you can take right off, so it even becomes more shiny when you're finished. I'm just going to cut a piece off here, and I'm going to use it with this bird die from Tim Holtz and Sizzix. So I've just cut a piece so I don't waste a lot. I'm going to place it right over the bird, and I'll do the same thing for the little wing that's right next to it. I'll just place a piece on there. I'm putting this through my Vagabond die cut machine. You could use any die cut machine for this. All of them work with these dies. However, I just really like the Vagabond. I think it's a very good, high quality machine, and it can cut through things like butter. But again, you could use this material and this die on other die cut machines also. So there you have it, a little bird, and we'll remove that coating in a little bit. I also wanted to do these snowflakes from the Tim Holtz collection with Sizzix. However, these need to fit inside of a die. They actually sell a tray that you could put these in. Because these are called movers and shapers, you can position them where you want. But instead of using the tray, I take this die, which is an excellent die to have on hand, from Tim Holtz, and I just put the snowflakes in it as a holding place. I put my mirrored sheet down onto it and run it through. So you could use that die, the ornamental tag, that shaped die alone, or you can put these snowflakes in it. So it's just a good way to use those. And there we have little die cut snowflakes. Next, I wanted to show you a way to add color to these mirrored pieces. You could also use alcohol inks, permanent pens such as Sharpie markers. You could use those too. But in this video I decided to show you Copic markers because I know a lot of Ellen's customers use Copic markers. So here is just a scrap of the mirrored embellishment so that I can show you what it's like. You can just take the coating right off of it, the protective coating that keeps it from getting scratched while you're working with it. You can see how nice and shiny it is. Now with Copic markers, the dark colors show up about medium on here. So this is a dark color of teal, but it shows up kind of medium. I'll show you, here's a medium color of teal, and it shows up very light. So you want to grab a color that's a bit darker than what you wanted. So you can play around with different colors on the scraps here, and you'll see I've done just that. Here I've tested out some colors. But one other thing you can do is if you scribble back and forth, it's very light and it blends very nicely. But if you pounce up and down, you can get darker color. So there are many ways that you can use Copics, and you'll actually see the ink kind of move on the mirror, which is really cool. Alcohol inks work great on this also. So I was going to color this guy here, and I show you if I want it to be dark, I could pounce on it with the tip of my Copic. You won't damage the tips, they're very durable. Or you can just scribble back and forth. I decided to scribble back and forth quickly, so I get kind of a streaky look. I thought that would be fun to add that feel to these snowflakes, but you could smooth it out if you wanted to. And there you can see the final results on those snowflakes. You want to give it a few seconds to dry before you touch it. Now I also added some color to the bird. So you see the bird here. I kept most of them plain, but I wanted to add some gray and black to his belly. So I'm taking a lighter shade of gray and just kind of dragging it from his belly and his tail up towards his head. And I'll do the same on his wing. Then I'm going to take a little bit darker shade of gray and go over it. Now I am not trying to blend it. I want to kind of make it look like little feathers. So I'm just kind of making these little swipes back and forth. And you can see the ink almost move on the mirror. That's what's fun about using these. And when you go back over them, you can see it kind of moves it all around. And I wanted to have the sketchy look to make it look like feathers. And I'll do some of this on the wing also. Now you could try to blend this better and make it smooth, but I thought this was a fun effect on these birds. So now I'm going to go with one more little bit darker. This is very dark, it's almost black, Copic marker, and add some final shading onto here. And you can see the great texture that you get by making those little sketch lines. Now if you do this and you aren't happy with how it looks, just take one of those alcohol swabs, wipe it off, and you can start over. That's one of the nice things about these markers. It's not permanent on these. You can just wipe them off with the alcohol swab. And so we'll put our bird together. Now I decided to add a little orange for his beak, and I colored that little branch there, but I'll show you in a moment. I'm going to actually change that. So now that my tag is dry, I'm going to add a piece of scrap paper here to the bottom of the tag, just a place where I could write my message if I want to, but in fact I'm just going to stamp a message there. Now you'll see here my branch, I decided to make a longer branch, and I hand cut this. I thought the other branch was too short for what I was doing. I wanted it to go across the whole tag, so I'm just hand cutting a piece. There's really no method to the madness here. You could trace it first if you wanted to, or draw it first, but I just find it simple enough to cut by hand. And I'm just cutting this from a scrap of that mirrored sheet. Now remember to keep your scraps here because you never know, you could use the little pieces for a small die cut if you wanted to. So now I'm just dragging a dark brown marker right across it, and I'll give it some time to dry, and then I'll be able to add that to my tag. If you're careful, you can pick it up and move it while it's still a little wet. It doesn't take very long to dry, but if you do touch it right away, you'll end up with a little fingerprint. So I'm going to carefully pick him up and stick him down onto the tag, and you'll see I used the lid of my marker here to press it in place so that I was afraid there I was going to get a fingerprint. So I'm just going to press it down. And there, I think it's fun to have that branch kind of hang off the sides. So now I wanted some leaves to go onto the branch, and I didn't really have a leaf die that was small enough, so I'm just going to hand cut some. They don't have to be perfect. I think it's fun when they're kind of edgy looking. So I'll just cut a few of these. And the other thing I was going to do, and I'll change it up, I'll show you in the end, but I used my Crop-A-Dowel to punch little circles from this. I thought it'd be fun to have little circles for the berries, but later on I ended up changing this a little bit. So now to color the berries, I just pounced with a bright red marker, and I've colored my leaves, but I noticed my leaves were too light when I colored back and forth on them, so I'm going back and pouncing on them with the cut marker so that it gets darker. And if you actually blow on this as you're doing it, it helps it to blend quickly because it moves that ink along the mirror. And there you can see the bright green leaves and the berries. Next, I decided I wanted to stamp a greeting on the bottom, and this playful kind of cutesy set from Hero Arts surprisingly has this greeting that works with any style of project. So sometimes, even if a stamp set doesn't fit the style of your project, the greetings might. In this case, it did. So I added that to the bottom, and now I'm going back and filling in some of those empty spaces with snowflakes. That wasn't a Christmas or holiday background stamp that I used, but by adding these tiny little snowflakes from that same stamp set, I transform it into a holiday look. So those little icon stamps, those tiny little stamps on stamp sets can be really useful. Next, I wanted to give the bird an eyeball. I felt he needed one. So I'm using a black pearl from Hero Arts. So I just cut it off of the sheet. It's got adhesive on the back already, and place it down with a craft knife. I think that just adds a little something to them. And you can see all the mirror shine that you get with this. Next, I wanted to back this tag up so that you could see all that white stamping. So I cut a tag from that same die that I used before, and I'm using Distress ink and an ink blending tool. The key to this is start off the paper and slowly work your way on gently, and it gives it just a little bit definition around the edge of the tag. Now to glue this piece on top of the tag, I'm using some really high foam dots. That way it raises that transparent piece off of the pool colored piece behind it. And by raising it up, you get a shadow effect that's really quite cool in real life. So I'm just going to glue that right onto it using that really high adhesive. And you'll see kind of that shadow effect that you get from that script stamping on the transparency onto the pool paper below. I think by adding it with those foam dots, it really makes a big difference. Then I'm using some Tim Holtz tinsel twine to the top here. Now instead of leaving this plain, I thought it'd be fun to add just a touch of pink to it, so that ties in with the pink that I used on the berries. And you could color it completely pink if you wanted to, but I just decided to add little touches here and there. So I'm just dabbing my Copic marker onto it so that it matches those berries that I added below. Now I decided to change up those berries. Remember how I told you I decided not to use the punch circles? And I decided to use some smooth gems instead. These are from Hero Arts, and if you just pounce the ink onto them, you can see you get bright bold color on these. And they look like little globes. So I'm just going to take one up with my craft sheet. You don't want to touch it right away because you might mess it up. And I'm going to place it right onto my project. This is a great way to take any plain colored pearls or rhinestones and change them to whatever color you want. And there you have it, a holiday tag with a bit of a feminine twist thanks to those little touches of pink. Be sure to visit Ellen Hutson's blog